Welcome, everyone, to People on Dating. I'm your host, Will Morales. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this podcast is about the ups and downs of dating and how to navigate through it. Today, I got, should I call you Reverend? Is that okay? Or Minister David Anderson?
I'm Reverend Doctor. Just David's fine. David's fine. It's too long to say.
Sounds good. So David Anderson is a minister and a wedding officiant. He has worked with over 1,800 couples. He has a doctorate in pastoral counseling. And there's so much more to David that we'll definitely have to add that on the show notes. Well, first of all, David, thank you so much for being on People on Dating. How are you?
Oh, I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. And today's topic is a good one, dating to engagement. I know that some people still want to get married. I think some people don't want to get married. And the first question I'm going to ask you, David, before we get into the topic is, what was your journey like? What was that? What gave you the oomph to become a pastor, if that makes sense, in counseling? What
Oh,
was
sure.
that journey for you?
Well, it started me. I've been a minister since I was 19. But the journey into the wedding thing, I kind of stumbled into it.
Uh,
I was a chaplain at a private school for a number of years, and after I had been there for a few years, some teachers and faculty members started coming up to me and asking me if I would perform their wedding. And I did. And so I would perform a wedding for one couple, and then I would have another teacher come up to, hey, will you do my wedding? And that kind of thing. And then I started having like coordinators and venues. They would say, well, do you have a card? I was like, no, I don't have a card. I'm just a minister at the school. And it soon started to blossom into this huge thing. And what I found myself serving as a community was I tend to find couples, or they find me, that they're not involved in a church. They're
okay.
usually not involved in a church. I would say out of the 1,800 weddings that I have performed, I've probably performed under 100 in a church building, which sounds weird. But the folks that reach out to me are like, I'm Catholic, she's Protestant, or we don't go, or we don't care, but our mom wants us to have a church wedding or something along those lines, or just in general, we're spiritual, but we're not religious. And but we feel like we need a minister. We feel like we
Right.
need a professional to help us through this. And so that started to blossom into what I have today. So my website is weddingchaplain.com, and I serve couples in Northeast Ohio, Western Pennsylvania.
Okay.
I'll do some around the country, but most of that is mostly in the Ohio, Pennsylvania area. And it's weird now because I am an ordained minister. I have a doctor of ministry, but people find me on an app. Like they go to an app and they find me, just like they find the florist and they find the caterer and
Yeah.
the venue. I'm just a dude on an app.
Yeah.
But what I like to tell people, like, hey, I'm a real minister. I'm not just somebody who decided to just go get ordained online or something like that. And so that brings people some comfort. But what I tell people from the beginning is I do want to help you with your day,
Yeah.
your event, but I'm way more interested in the marriage. I'm way more interested in the relationship. And so how you got to this point, how you got engaged, I want to make sure that you're healthy after the wedding, all of that. So it's wedding and marriage. That's sort of the focus for me.
Yeah, and and today's topic is dating to engagement, and I'm just gonna throw it out there, David. Is marriage dying slowly? It seems it's become a transactional type of dating in modern times in 2025, according to what I see online. Now, I'm pretty sure a lot of those people are doing it for click, as they call it, clickbait
Right.
or whatever. But is courting done. It seems like no, even women are complaining that men don't court anymore.
Right.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Well, no,
Please.
I spend time talking through that. And I'll say first and foremost that dating's not, I mean, marriage is not as unhealthy as we want to believe.
Right.
There are some things that go into it. One of the things, like the popular statistic that's out there, the one that's in our culture, the one that just floats around is that 50% number.
Mhm.
50% of marriages end in divorce, one out of two, and all that. Um, the reality is that number is so high because of the number of young weddings.
Mhm.
Okay, so the people who get married, unfortunately, for whatever reason, 16, 17, 18, 19,
Wow.
20, 21. The statistics don't care. Like if you look at that statistic, it's the number of weddings and the number of divorce decrees in a given year, and it comes out to about 50%.
Right.
Um, what I want to tell people is if you can wait for, there's really two things that we look for. One, are you over the age of 24? And two, have you been together for 2 years? That's sort of the
Mhm.
magic. That's the magic combo. And there's other things, hey, is there divorce in your family, things like that. But
Right.
the main
David,
thing we're
for
looking for that
I,
is
I
you
just
can
wanted to ask you
wait.
something. I'm sorry, I didn't
Yeah,
mean to cut you off.
no, you're fine.
So when you talk about being together for 2 years, should they live together for 2 years or date for 2 years? Like how would that work? Because some women I know said they will not live with their boyfriend unless there's a chance, unless they're engaged or they got married. So
Right.
yeah, if you could define the 2 years.
Well, so what we talk about with the 2 years is basic, just ground zero relationship. I have been in a relationship with you for 2 years. Whether you've moved in together or not, whether you're dating or whatever those boundaries are, we've been in a romantic relationship for 2 years. So
Hmm.
if you come to me and you've been dating for 6 months and you want me to do your wedding, I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. You
Right.
haven't known each other long enough. For the first 6 months, you're perfect. I'm perfect. She's perfect. We're all perfect. And your friends are like, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, the idea of living together. I mean, the reality for living together is there's no trial relationship.
Hmm.
There's no, well, let's try. There's nothing going to change. And what I tell people is, well, we live together for a few years. We're waiting until we get married. And the big shocker is, I mean, obviously there's a lot of religious elements that would say, hey, that, you shouldn't do that. And it's not, according to a particular faith. But the reality, this is the hard reality, is that nothing's going to change on wedding day.
Hmm.
There is no magic. There's no magic that's going to, so where you were on Friday and where you end up on Monday, if the wedding is on Saturday, it doesn't matter. And
Right.
so people think, oh, it's going to be different. Like, oh, I'm going to be more committed after the wedding, So I'm only kind of committed to you now. I'm going to be more committed after the wedding. The reality that's not how that works.
Right.
So you're either committed or you're not. And that idea, like, hey, I'm not ready. I want to live with you, but I'm not ready to be married to you. There's nothing going to change other than
Right.
other than the paper and the rings. And so if you're ready to live with somebody, you should be ready to marry somebody.
Ah,
Uh,
okay.
and so there's just, it's you're going to end up on it's going to be a disappointment. If
Hmm.
you think oh my gosh, now we're married, now there's this whole different world that's opened up to us. No, you go back to work, you go back to the apartment, you go back to the house, you go back to the dog, whatever the situation is. And what happens with a lot of folks is like they'll ask this weird question, like, what did I do that for?
Hmm.
And it's not about marriage. It's just like why did we wait? So like coming out of the pandemic, we had a bunch of weddings that would be canceled. And hey, we want our wedding in 2020. And I saw some couples, they rescheduled their wedding like 4 times because they
Oh.
wanted this event. And by the time one girl had her wedding, they had her wedding, it was like 2 years later because she wanted this event, and that's completely fine. But the reality is, you sat in limbo. You sat in limbo
Hmm.
because engagement or living together, you don't really have a clean, like, what are you? Like,
Right.
what are you? Are you guys, what are you? And our culture only really has a few definitions. You're either dating, you're engaged, or you're married.
Right.
Okay. If you're living together but you're not engaged, our culture tends to be like, oh, and they just kind of look at you weird, like, okay. Because the reality for dating, and just getting back to where we started with, the idea of dating, it's kind of an interesting thing. It does have a purpose. It does have, you should be dating for a purpose.
Hmm.
Um, the people who are just dating, like, we're just dating to have fun. There's really no such thing, you know. Now, it's not to say, hey, I need to decide whether I love you 3 dates in or something like that. There should be some time, but it should be leading somewhere. Okay.
Right.
I enjoy spending time with you and I want to see you tomorrow. Well, why do I want to see you tomorrow? Well, I like you and I want to spend more time with you. And so after that second date, okay, I want to see you again. What's the purpose of that? Because I want to continue a relationship with you. So it's not just a transactional thing. If it's just that, then you're probably in trouble. Like, yeah, I go to the gas station, and guess what? I'm going to go to the gas station again next week.
Right.
Okay, that is a transactional thing. I don't need to think about the gas station all week long. Don't need to, worry about where my gas station went. But with dating, it should be going somewhere
Right.
because I ask you questions, I spend time with you, you make me laugh, we're having a good time, there's a physical attraction, whatever's going on, and I want I either want more of that or less of that.
Hmm.
And there's really no static. It's not just flat line, okay?
Right.
I either want to spend less time with you or more time with you, okay? And so dating, you should have an agenda. And that sounds weird. That sounds weird. So, I don't want to sound like I have ulterior motives, but you should be thinking, I this should be going somewhere. Where is this going? Um, and if you're dating somebody that doesn't want it to go anywhere, then you're caught in a transactional thing.
Right.
I'm using you. I'm just using you for physicality. I'm using you for security. I'm using you for fun. You're my mode of transportation. You are my meal ticket or whatever. None of those are things that people want. And
Yeah.
so dating, there should be some kind of process. We are working towards something. Now, don't put a lot of pressure on first date, second date. It doesn't, I don't need to know your all your life goals on day one, but you should recognize, hey, this is going somewhere. And if it's not going anywhere, it doesn't mean you have to necessarily end it, but you just sort of have to be clear with yourself and with this person, like, hey, you know what? I like you for the summer, and I'm just letting you know. Once I go back to school,
Yeah.
you know, and
So
that's
state
all.
your intention up front, or
State your
would
intentions up front.
okay.
I'm here on vacation. It's weird. People in Vegas have much clearer intentions than the rest of the culture. What are you here for? I'm just here for the weekend. I am just here to have fun or make up a name or whatever.
Right.
But when you're dating someone, yeah, there should be some clear, this is where I'm at in life. And so that's why when we do that magic number thing, where we want somebody to be 24 or above, the reality is when you're 21 or 20, you really can't tell. You
Yeah.
can't tell the difference between fun and intention. Okay? It's really, even especially for guys, it's just kind of like caveman. Like, I just
Yeah,
like
we're
you.
learning as
I
we
want to
go.
be close to you. I want to touch you. I don't know what else to do. Once you're 24, you can start asking other questions. Hey, you are cute. I do like you.
Right.
But you're also finishing school. You finish the military. You're in graduate school. You have a job. You have some kind of goals in life. And then you can start to see, hey, these paths are sort of coming together. And so that's an important thing, is to say, hey, going down, are we going down the same path? Um, and it's hard. It's hard in college. You can meet a bunch of people in college. You could date a bunch of people in college. And while you're at school, you could be going all kinds. I could be an engineer. You could be a teacher. One could be a doctor, one could be a lawyer. You are going on totally different paths, but you recognize, hey, when we're in college, we're all right here. We're all just sort of stuck here. So we think it
Yeah.
works. And then there's this crisis that happens when you graduate and you realize, oh my gosh, no, they were on a whole different path the whole time. So yes, it is important to have an agenda when you sort of like at least what am I looking for? What are my goals? What are my intentions?
Yeah, it's funny because when I read about, or I read about the marriage statistics where years ago, or, like you said before, people were getting married between 21 to 22, 23. Now it's gotten a little older, now 27, 20, 29. Maybe you could talk more about that. Are we not getting to know again? Like I wanted to go back to like getting to know someone. It seems like it's such an internet or dating apps type of generation
Right.
that nobody's meeting in person. Everything is through text, and I'm not a apps type of guy. I've
Right.
never been a favor of it. I tried it. I didn't like it. I like to meet people organically, whether it's at a networking event or a speed dating event or singles event. That's how I prefer to do it. Is that something you would recommend to people that you might know? Because what can you get out of a dating app, to be honest with you? That's my bias against it.
Well, I'm not. I think the jury's out. I do know that about 30% of the couples that I work with meet on an app.
Okay.
Now, where those stories get interesting is I want to know a few things. How long did you talk on the app? Okay.
Okay.
If it's just I don't know what it is, the Tinder, like, hey, I just saw you, I'll ask you out tomorrow night kind of thing, then we all know what that is.
Right.
Did you talk for a while? And there's some apps that are better than others. There's one out there, I forgot what it's called, but you like the girl initiates. She's the one that asks first. There's questions, and you go through this sort of conversational thing. I don't mind the idea that you talk first, that
Hmm.
it starts with conversation, that it's not just, hey, are you cute or whatever. Um, the time thing really it doesn't matter if you find each other on the app. The illusion, the illusion sometimes of the app is that I already know, like because I can go through the app, I can look at my stuff obviously and see what the other person's stuff is. The illusion is I already, you're a perfect match for me. Okay,
Mm.
we don't know that if you just meet somebody out in a restaurant or whatever, you don't know that until you have gone out with them a few times. So the illusion of the app is, oh, I've got like a 96% match rate with this person. And the app can't really tell you that. There is
Right.
still time. You still have to put the time in. So the culture feels like, hey, I can know or I can figure out whether you are the love of my life based on some character traits or some bio points in your app, and
Hmm.
I can know a lot faster. The reality is there is no microwave. There is no microwave.
Right.
The 2 year rule is for real. It you have to let this thing cook for a little bit. Um, and you know what I'm also curious about, and not a lot of couples tell me is like, so if we met on an app I also like, hey, how many other people were you talking to? And
Mhm.
no one likes to be honest with me on
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Nobody.
So,
That's
hey,
the people
I
hiding
like
that. Yeah.
you, but I was talking to six other people as well. So you got to be like, all right, really, 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 hey, what was really going on? What were you looking for? Now, sometimes if people have stumbled into it, and but again, it still takes time to sort of work that stuff out. Say, hey, did you really let this thing happen organically? Even if it starts online. Um, so I'm not opposed to it. I know the numbers are rising.
Yeah.
But in terms, like you said, with the ages, the ages are it is changing. I do as a minister, I do a lot of funerals, and so
Mhm.
I hear a lot of stories, and I will do these beautiful funerals for couples or families, and so and so passed away. They were 87 years old or 86 or whatever, and they were married for 56 years or 62 years or these
Yeah.
incredible numbers. And you'll hear their story, and it's always sort of interesting. Like they graduated from high school in June, they got married in May, or they got married in August, or they got married
Right.
a year later, or the guy went to the service for 2 years and then they were married 2 years later. So it was fast. It was 18, 19, 20. If you were 21, 22 back then and you weren't married, oh my gosh, people looked at you weird. But
Yeah.
now but it's also too, you look around, not everybody's doing that. And so you sort of look
Right.
at like how the whole culture is moving. And they're recognizing, yes, the young, we hear stories now. It's like, hey, we got married young and they ended up divorced. We're not hearing a lot of we got married young and that ended up 50 years.
Mm.
And so people are sort of picking up on, hey, maybe I need to wait a little bit. Um, and then just to sort of figure out. I mean, there's other dynamics. There's the finances, there's the the family, your family background, my family background, all those things sort of go into it. And you really have to
Right.
sort of think through, are we a good match? And so that's always my plug with a premarital counselor, with the minister. A lot of people don't want to do premarital counseling because they're afraid I might say something like, "Oh, he's going to tell us we're not good." But like, it is good to have somebody objectively say, "Hey, there's some things here you need to pay attention to. There's some things here that you need to be careful about. There's some things here that make you guys a great couple."
Yeah. No, it's funny. I don't think, and it's funny because you mentioned something like having a let's say, or as they say, pre-wedding jitters that they might talk about. But
Hmm.
at least you're talking. You might give a little, a little something of an edge to both couples or to both people by saying, "Hey, you guys met, 6 months ago. Are you guys really ready?" I'm not saying you say that, but I'm just saying, because I've seen that where when I was younger. David, and we're talking with David Anderson. Today's topic is dating to engagement. And I remember I was dating this woman, and 3 months later, she asked me if I loved her, and I was scared because I never had that before. And I was,
Hmm.
I think, 28, and she was maybe 26. And
Hmm.
I told her the truth. I said no, and it was hard because. I guess it was like a reaction. I'm
Hmm.
just getting to know her. I'm not seeing her every day. I'm seeing her maybe only on the weekends. We ended up breaking up after that,
Yeah.
shortly after, because I was honest, but then I did miss her, David. I think maybe I was in love with her because I couldn't stop thinking about her, but I didn't chase her as I should have.
Right.
Um, does that come into play when you talk to couples, to future marriage couples, where someone's putting pressure on the other person to, like, hey, do you love me right now? If not, then I gotta go. I
Right.
think it's, even in today's age, you're talking 30, 40 years ago, even today's age, it seems like it's becoming transactional. Yeah, go ahead,
Right.
Dave.
People want, it is moving a little bit faster. Um, you have to recognize every single, I've never met a couple where they were on the same level like all the time.
Right,
Okay. And there are times, and this sounds weird because we think, well, if we're in love, we should both have the same level of attraction, same level of passion. Um, it does ebb and flow. There are times where one person's going to be way more into the relationship than the other. And that
right.
sounds terrible, but it's true.
Yeah, yeah.
There are days where you're going to feel more in love than others. Okay. And
Hmm.
there's some days you're just going to drive me nuts. And that's just, um, but it goes in phases. And what I would tell people is that what you could have said, not to go back in time, but yeah, I I I don't know that I'm in love with you. I think I'm falling.
Right.
I think I'm getting there. And and I'm enjoying the time I spend with you. The more time I spend with you, the more I want to spend with you. So it's a trajectory. And so what I always tell people is that it's not there's never a point where you're going to arrive.
Right.
Okay. You're never just going to be here. Like your relationship, it always needs nurturing. And so like when I work with engaged couples, um, I always there's two ways that I approach that. And first I'll sort of, hey, are you a good match? And so we go through things like age, we go through things like education, family background, all this stuff. And
Hmm.
we can say, hey, after a while, I can tell you guys on paper you're a good match. But that's only the first part. That is only the first part. The second thing you have to recognize, you have to maintain the relationship. So it's sort of like, hey, this is the perfect car. I'm buying this car off the showroom. It's awesome. Okay. I live in Northeast Ohio. We woke up this morning, it was 10 degrees outside. There's salt
Oof.
everywhere.
Oof.
Okay. Um, we know in our part of the country that you have to take care of the car. Like you have
Right.
to. You're going to just, oh, it was perfect when I bought it. It should just last me for, no, no. We just know. And so with a relationship, you have to recognize, hey, there is some maintenance I have to do. So I talk a lot about dating, especially with engaged couples, because something happens after a while. Once in perhaps this was going on with the girl that you had a relationship with, we think we're going to get to a place and we don't have to date anymore.
Mm.
The reality is no, you have to, you're always dating. You're always dating. Okay. Dating, there's all kinds of research that's out there. There's all kind of books and fellowships and study projects. They've all come up with this amazing, simple conclusion. People that date stay together. People
Mm.
that date stay together. And it sounds like, okay, that's pretty obvious. But the reality is, once couples get to a place of permanence, we're in love, we're engaged, we've
Right.
moved in together, we've gotten married, whatever. The reality is that dating begins to fade, that it begins to fade into the background. Even though we like it, even though we enjoy it, we're sort of made for dating. We sort of enjoy that whole thing.
Right.
But what happens is once you're in a place of permanence, once I've declared my love for you, I could plant the flag or something like that, we kind of think we're done. And the reality, no, you have to keep dating. And so after you get to a place of permanence, you it starts to fall off a cliff. And we fall into something called the illusion of proximity,
Hmm.
which means uh, you know, if we're in the same house together, I just kind of see you all the time. I go to bed, there you are. I wake up and there you are. I go to my bathroom, there you are. You're everywhere. And
Yeah.
so but the illusion is this, that's not an endless date. That is not an
Okay.
endless date. Okay? It is we're just in the house together. And there's plenty of times during the day that is just not romantic. And there's a reality, like I can be in the house with you all day long, but if all of a sudden at 5 o'clock we get dressed and we go to somewhere to eat,
Yeah.
it's different. It is different. Why it's different at Chili's than it was at 1 o'clock in the house, I have no idea. I love Chili's though. You
Right.
but it is. There's something about it. So I put all of my couples on something called the date challenge.
Okay.
And the date challenge is pretty simple. There's four rules for the date challenge, and this is primarily for engaged couples. But the first rule is this: is if you're trying to maintain the relationship, number one, you have to go on a date once a week.
Right.
That's number one. Okay. Not once a month, not, anything like that. You got together because you want to be together.
Right.
It's always amazing to me how many couples don't spend time together. It's bizarre. Like I just want to be with you all the time, but I work all the time and I never see you. So
Right.
you have to go on a date once a week. For engaged couples, this is rule number two. Rule number two is you can't talk about the wedding on date night. Okay.
Okay.
Not talk about the wedding. Okay. And that's a hard one because once you're engaged, that's all you think about is this big event, this big
Yeah.
party. We got to plan all this stuff. And so you got one night a week where you don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. The third one, and this sort of keeps it fun, and this can work for any relationship, whether you're engaged or just dating or whatever. The third one is you should alternate who plans date night.
Mm.
Alternate who plans date night. Now, guys usually get stuck with date night. It's the gentleman thing. You're courting. We're
Yeah.
chivalrous. Whatever word you want to use. But the reality for most guys is we're not movie stars. We usually have three good dates. Okay,
Right.
and we've used them by now, and we try our best to recycle those things to see if they'll still work. Or we come up with what I call the guy phrase. The guy phrase is this: um, "Honey, I'll do whatever you want to do."
Right.
I'll do whatever you want to do. And the reality is he's got nothing. but he still wants to go out and have fun. So it's the girl who has to come up with the idea. And so I
Yeah.
always tell these couples like, hey, you gotta alternate. So, dude, you're on for this Friday, she's on for next Friday. And I have little sub rules. Sub rules is you can't change each other's plan. Don't do anything stupid. Don't jump out of planes or anything weird.
Right, right,
And then I always tell the girls like, Target is not a date. So let's all just make sure we know that.
right.
Target is not a date. Okay, it's not a date.
Yeah.
But then the fourth one, which is a powerful rule, the fourth one is you should ask the question. And the question is, will you go out with me?
Okay.
Will you go out with me? Which is golden. That is the most one of the most powerful questions. Obviously, the proposal question is huge. That's the big
Yeah.
question. But will you go out with me? And that question, it's interesting. Every single romantic movie or romantic story or whatever you're watching on Netflix, Bridgerton, or wherever these shows are,
Sure.
they're all the question is in there. Will you go out with me? And that's the heart of it all. Like all superhero movies are kind of the same. All love stories are kind of the same.
Yeah.
You want to hear this couple. Somebody asks a question, somebody says yes, and then the rest of the story is like usually the couple has to figure something out. They have to
Yeah.
solve a problem or something. But the question is important. And so once you're in a relationship, whether you're just dating and you're pretty serious, whether you are moving towards engagement, engaged, or you're married, you should still ask this question. Will you go out with me?
Okay.
And we love to hear the question. We love to say the question. It's just there's something about it. And I always tell the guys, like, listen, you guys, like, so hey, we've been together for 4 years or 5 years or 10 years. And I always joke, say, you probably have not used this question.
Probably not, right?
And you've moved to what we call assumption, which is great. Assume is great. But the problem with assume is that I could take you for granted. Like I don't have
Right.
to work for this thing anymore.
Yeah.
So for the guys, I say, listen, man, you got all kinds of unused pickup lines. Pull them out, continue to use them. But the idea is that that's the courting piece that you were getting to earlier.
Tour. Yeah.
I still like you enough to ask you. Okay. I want to ask you this question. And so I often joke with guys like, listen, if she comes in and she's upset before she says anything, you should say, hey, hold on. I just wanted to know if you would go out with me on Friday.
Right.
And she'll stop what she's doing. She'll get dizzy and well, what did I come in here for? It's like,
Right.
I'm here so I can ask you out. Um, but I give that to every engaged couple. That's your four rules. That's the date challenge. And that it helps you because it keeps it a priority. Part of what happens in dating is, and not to use your story as a
Sure,
template,
sure, sure.
and once we get to love, then I don't need to do this stuff anymore.
Right.
Like, no, no. It may make you feel good, it may make you feel secure, but no, you constantly have to keep going. And so if you get to a point where I don't want to ask you out anymore, that may be a sign that the relationship's not where you want it to be anymore.
Right.
But hey, if I love you, I want to spend time with you. And so with the engaged couples, what I'm trying to also do is I'm trying to get them to get off of the wedding date. Okay. You got nine
Right.
months till the wedding. That's going to take care of itself. I want you to focus on your relationship this weekend. So if your relationship's in trouble, I would simply say, how much time do you guys spend together? When's the last time you went out? And that is the telltale question. Okay.
Right.
Because I'll have couples who come in and I work with them in marriage counseling and things like that. And he doesn't do this anymore. She doesn't do this. And we've got these problems. And that's the first question. I don't want to hear about your money. I don't want to hear about your kids. I don't want to hear about anything. When's the last time you two went out? Well, I'm not going out because, I'm mad. I'm mad at him or she's mad at me or whatever. No.
Right.
When's the last time you two went out? And I put them on a date diet right away. Okay. You're going to go on a date once a week. No, we have problems. You need to help us work out these problems. No, you need to go out. We'll talk about that stuff later. We'll get to
Right.
that. But I want to know that, I'm not the judge and jury. I'm not going to come in. People want that to happen. Like, okay, we got this problem. He did something terrible. She did something terrible. And they just want me to say, okay, that person's terrible. I mean, is that what you want? Or do you want to save the relationship?
Right.
So the relationship, it starts with dating. You have to date. You have to continue. It does not matter whether you are in the 6 month zone, 6 day zone. You've been together for 6 years, 60 years. You need to date. You need to go out. So
No, and I love that premise about dating because at least you're out of the house, you're getting I hate to say reacquainted with each other, but at least you could find there's so many events that you could do together, which I love. Well, first of all, David, I want to thank you so much for being on People on Dating. This is to me eye-opening because nobody talks about this at all. Just the courtship, especially with couples, whether you're engaged or even single, just getting to know each other. Before I let you go, David, anything else you want to talk about or promote? Uh, you have probably a TEDx talk in you, more
yeah.
books in you, you know?
So I do some speaking, but yeah, most of what you can find about me is at my website. It's weddingchaplain.com. So the word chaplain is chaplain. Some people don't know how to spell that all the time. But it's
Right,
weddingchaplain.com, all one word. On there, you can find my book that I published last year. You can find my
right.
podcast. If you're interested in me doing your wedding, I hope you live close to me. But if you're interested in premarital counseling, marriage coaching, in a few weeks, we're going to have a whole financial section on there as well.
Right.
So everything and anything. My blog is on there. So all things David Anderson, you can find that at weddingchaplain.com.
Yeah, I'll definitely put that on the show notes. Well, again, David, thank you so much again for being on People on Dating. I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
All right. Bye-bye.